How to make great coffee at home? Let's go. You don't need to be a coffee aficionado, a coffee nerd. You don't need to have $2,000, $3,000 of equipment. There's some simple tips that will ensure consistency and ensure a great tasting cup of coffee. Again, guys, I'm Mike. My wife and I, we took our love of coffee. We made coffee at home for many years. We would travel, we'd go to all these different coffee shops, and we took our love and experiences and we started East Peoria Coffee, and then we ultimately opened East Peoria Coffee House. And I do this program on YouTube, or programs on YouTube, to help enhance your specialty coffee shop experience and teach you about coffee. Make sure you subscribe. And to make coffee at home, it's very easy if you follow a few key elements. And there is one big secret tip that can really make or break coffee. Let's get into it. All right, so tip number one is you want to use whole beans. Once you grind the beans start to oxidize and they start to lose their flavor, sort of like opening a bottle of wine. Now you say, well, I don't have a grinder. Well, let me tell you this, you don't need a fancy grinder like one of the two here we have here at the coffee house, or certainly like the espresso grinder. You just need a simple burr grinder. Even the cheapest ones you can find at Amazon, Walmart, any store, those probably run $50 to $60. Those will suffice if you're simply making pour over coffee or coffee in a coffee pot. The only time you need a high-end grinder really is if you're making espresso. So in most cases, all you need is a simple grinder. It will suffice and do the trick for any type of coffee being made at home. Again, the key is whole beans. Now, some people or the coffee nerds will say, well, you should probably have a coffee scale. And while that does help, this is a coffee scale. You can get them for $20 to $24. That will help keep you very, very consistent. The golden ratio for coffee to water is 18 grams of water per 1 gram of coffee, although we like it a little bit stronger than that. Hey, look, the situation is you don't necessarily need this once you start making coffee at home, because you probably make around the same amount consistently. You'll be pretty good at eyeballing how much coffee you need to produce that cup of coffee or good cup of coffee. But a coffee scale in the world of coffee equipment is probably the most cost-effective purchase out there. So it can help, and it does help really lock in the right amount of coffee. All right, so now we have our ground coffee ready to go here in our Chemex. You can use it in a pour-over coffee maker or just a drip coffee maker. The key is when you grind the coffee, especially for a pour-over, the coffee grounds in here, they need to be more coarse. The mistake people make when it comes to grinding coffee is they grind the coffee too fine. So it's too fine. You can make it a little more coarse, especially when you're using a Chemex or really any kind of slower speed drip coffee maker. Okay, now to the fourth element, which is the most critical element when it comes to the flavor and the taste. And this is why your coffee probably at home doesn't taste quite as good as it does at the coffee shop, even if it's the same bag of coffee. Here's why. Remember, to recap, we got whole beans, we got measuring, and we have grinding and grinding the right setting. All right, so the big element of coffee, because coffee is 98% water, water is the key element, and a lot of people do not have filtered water or have hard water or water with different minerals, especially when you go camping or go somewhere on vacation. The coffee tastes very, very different. And trust me, I know what our coffee tastes like here, and I know what it tastes like at some other places we go. So water is such a key element. Now, our water, I think, is like triple filtered, say that, I guess. Our water is filtered here 3 times at least before it goes into any of these machines. If you're at home, you don't have that. We have a home filter, but you could just simply use bottled water. Typically, this is pretty good filtered and better than what's coming out of your tap. So consider using that. But water is the key. You really want to use filtered water, not distilled water, but filtered water. Okay, the fifth and final element when you're making coffee, pour over coffee in your coffee pot, is the temperature of the water. Now this kettle actually has a temperature gauge on it. We brew coffee here at 198 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is pretty much the consistency that you want. You want it somewhere between about 197 and about 202 as your temperature. Now, the cheaper the coffee pot, if it's a cheap drip coffee maker, right? The components are typically plastic. The more expensive coffee pots, when people say, what's the difference in price? Typically, it's the hardware in the drip coffee maker. It keeps the consistency of the temperature better. In this, of course, you're going to lose some of this, so you could probably go up to about 205 with your water. But after that, you really don't want to put it on. It's going to be just a little too hot, and certainly if you go under 190, it's going to be too cold. So again, ideally, you want to be right around that 200 mark when you're brewing coffee. That's your water temperature. So one final tip, if you are making a pour over in a Chemex or any type of pour over, make sure you go slow. Slower is typically better. Mistake people make is they go too fast. So that's it. You can make great coffee shop quality coffee at home. If you want to learn more about being a barista or more about coffee, make sure you subscribe, guys. But it's easy, but don't forget the water. I think that is really the key element in making great coffee anywhere. We'll talk to you soon.